We were married 17 years. Although, to be honest, the marriage started going slowly downhill after 10, and by 2018, 2019, it was definitely crappy. I didn't do much to try and help fix it. I was definitely avoidant. I had basically made the decision that I was going to tough it out until our kids graduate high school. A good 8 years at that point. But it eventually got to the point where I had serious doubts as to whether I could make it that long. We were in marriage counseling for a while before things fell apart. And at one point, my ex dropped the bomb that she felt like she was being sexually harassed by her boss, and that she felt like her boss was setting her up to get fired, etc. We had some fairly significant discussion about her quitting, maybe hiring a lawyer, but eventually those discussions just ended. Our ex life was minimal the last few years, maybe once every 2 to 3 weeks, but by mid-2019, it became non-existent and we started sleeping in separate bedrooms. She was in the middle of changing careers and going back to school, so she was essentially never home. I was the primary breadwinner by a long shot and made all the meals, did the laundry, took the kids to and from school, etc. All of this became too much for me to handle, and I couldn't really verbalize it. So I started therapy. Eventually, my therapist made me realize that she was disengaging and that while I could try and save the marriage if I wanted to, I would have to accept the fact that she wouldn't be a source of support. So I brought up separating. She faked being upset for about 15 minutes and then basically, quote unquote, well, if that's what you think is best. COVID hit a month or two later. There was no discussion at all about reconciling, but there wasn't much urgency for me to move out. Sometime in August of 2020, we were in the kitchen at the same time, and she put her cell phone down on the counter right in front of me, almost like she meant to do it. Her phone was open to a text conversation where she was calling someone, quote unquote, my love. Of course, it's her boss, the one who was the topic of many marriage counseling sessions when she claimed he was harassing her. I was sort of shocked, but honestly was almost happy because it solidified my decision. I started looking for apartments the next day and moved out about 2 months later. We spoke briefly about it a few times, and I got several different stories, most of which contradict the other. I must have misread the text. The text was actually to someone else. She calls lots of people my love. No, she doesn't. The two of them are really good friends. No, she doesn't seem to remember ever accusing him of sexual harassment, etc. Of course, the day I moved out, he essentially moved in. He never formally moved in as I was still paying the mortgage, but his car was there constantly. This guy lived about an hour away. During the divorce proceeding, I found out he paid the retainer to the divorce attorney, and he paid about $15,000 towards her credit cards. Divorced last year and loving it, and it was the best decision I have ever made. Writing this hoping that anyone that was caught in this position know that it would get better. I have long since grieved and ended the marriage, but the fact that I was cheated on in the beginning caused me serious issues, insecurities with my current relationship. I am having significant problem dealing with them. Honestly, ending the marriage was one of the best things to ever happen to me, so I should be happy that she sort of forced the issue. I guess I feel angry at myself that I was so easily fooled, because up until the moment I saw her text, I would have never guessed she would be capable of cheating. It makes me question a whole lot and caused a huge blow in my self-confidence. She racked up huge credit card bills during our marriage that I refused to help her pay off because I have helped her on that several times before. Although he helped her pay for her credit cards, that didn't really help me in the divorce. I wanted to push the argument that they are cohabitating, even if they haven't formally moved in together. He's there all the time and he's paying her bills. So why should I have to pay alimony? That much alimony. My lawyer initially liked the argument, but eventually thought it would be difficult, expensive to prove. At best, that angle saved me the equivalent of a year of alimony. So it wasn't worthless. It just wasn't worth a lot. As I mentioned in another comment, my financial obligation to her is fixed, so he could dump her tomorrow and she can't come back to me for another dime in alimony. Part of me wouldn't mind seeing that, but since the kids live with her 50% of the time, the last thing they need is to be with a mom who is now desperate for money and desperate to find a man to help her live her life. So for their sake, I sort of hope he sticks around, at least until they're out of high school. So why am I loving the fact I am divorced? For many reasons. Here are a few off the top of my head. Not having to walk on eggshells constantly. Much better relationship with my kids. We are all much more relaxed. We split custody 50-50. The knowledge that younger, hotter women do indeed want to have sex with me. Being able to focus on my goal and moving my life forward as opposed to constantly cleaning up her messes, both literally and figuratively. Knowing that when I clean a room in my apartment, it will generally stay somewhat clean for at least a few days. Having a relationship with a woman who seemed to truly appreciate that I am in her life, despite the insecurities I have described above. If your path is anything like mine, you better be prepared for the next few years to be a whole lot better than the last few. Honestly, the first weekend after I moved out, it felt like the first weekend at college, like I knew I was at the precipice of a new and exciting chapter in my life. Responding to the comment that she definitely wanted me to see the text with her boss when she left her phone open in front of me, and she wanted me to fight for her. And when I didn't confront her like she wanted me to, she doubled down with him. I am sure that the comment was accurate about the cell phone. And it's funny you say that. At some point in the ensuing months, we had a quick talk about things, and she mentioned how she was disappointed that I didn't try to fight for her. That made me laugh, primarily because in hindsight, she definitely wasn't worth fighting for. When my kids found out about the affair, we have never really had that conversation. Both of my kids had already sort of met the guy, had met him when visiting my wife's place of work. They were both clearly a little unnerved, uneasy, not freaked out, but they seemed to have no idea what to say around me. I got the distinct feeling she told them not to talk to me about the guy. So why they didn't want to go against their mother? They didn't want to have to lie to me. So I didn't want to make them uncomfortable. So I basically just ignored it. Once it became clear that the guy was basically living there, I suggested to my ex that the two of us sit down with the kids and have that conversation. Tell them that mom and dad may start dating others. It's okay. It's nothing bad, etc. My ex basically shut that down immediately and basically said that she would have any conversation with them that she felt was appropriate on her own. I didn't want to put the kids in the middle of things, so I just gently let them know I was aware of things and it was okay. My ex have made it clear that we were not really co-parenting. She's the parent on weeks she has them, and I'm the parent on weeks that I have them. It's basically not ideal, but it does drastically reduce the amount of interaction between us, so that's a plus. I started dating about 6 months later, and they have met my now girlfriend about a year after that. I did mention at some point that I didn't expect or want them to feel like they needed to hide anything or lie to their mom about anything, including my girlfriend. I think they are relatively comfortable with me being in this relationship. Of course, I never shoved it down their throat, and we haven't moved in together. In fact, my girlfriend has never spent any significant amount of time at my place when I have my kids, had never stayed over while they are here, and etc. I am not going to blow up their world further by blasting their mother for cheating on me when they already know what happened. I have made it clear that I am around to talk about things with them if they ever want to discuss things. I am sure at some point they will want more information, and I will revisit the issue and give them more information if it seems appropriate. Obviously, she's using him for his money, but I don't care if their relationship works or not. I am very happy our marriage is over. I just wish she handled things a different way, because the trauma of finding out she was cheating on me is having long-term effects. It killed my confidence and caused me all sorts of insecurities. I am constantly thinking that my girlfriend is settling for me, is going to jump ship the moment something better comes along, etc. I think if we're able to end the marriage amicably and without cheating, I wouldn't be having these problems. Our divorce is finalized, so it's not like it's going to affect me financially, one way or another. They could get married tomorrow or break up tomorrow. The amount I'm going to pay her is the same. I wouldn't say I got screwed in the divorce, but objectively speaking, I took a huge financial hit. My retirement savings are essentially gone, and I gave up my equity interest in the marital home. Did this so I could pay her alimony in a lump sum, so I wouldn't be financially tethered to her for years. Responding to the comments about why I pay so much in alimony, when she has a job. That's because she makes significantly less than I do. Although she was in the midst of changing careers to make a significantly higher income, but dropped out shortly after we agreed to separate. My income took a significant dive the last year of our marriage because I went out on a leave of absence, which was due to the impending destruction of the marriage. I went back to work around the time we agreed to separate, and then COVID hit. My income never really recovered due to both my issues and COVID. Her attorney argued that my income should be inputted at a ridiculous high rate. My attorney told me that while we could argue that I was entitled to be inputted for less, a judge will never input my income at the amount I was actually making. In my state and in most states, I believe, marital fault plays absolutely no role in alimony. The only real variables are length of the marriage and the difference in incomes. So had I not bought her out in the lump sum, I was going to be looking at alimony in the range of $1,600 to $2,000 per month for 8 to 9 years. These are essentially middle of the road numbers. Expensive mistake, I know. She started working with him several years before things went really bad. Although things started going downhill for a whole bunch of reasons, but I doubt he was the reason. I do believe the affair was the death nail of it though, because when our ex-life dropped to zero and we started sleeping in separate bedrooms, even if things were going poorly before, that really divided us and ensured that things would never be fixed. Like I said, I know I didn't do all I could do to try and save it, but is there much incentive to fix a marriage when one spouse essentially moved to another part of the house and is simply waiting for the other spouse to call it quits? Now that we are divorced, we don't really communicate unless it's over text, and then it's solely about kids, divorce-related finances. The divorce has been final for about 6 months. There is still some financial stuff being processed. The kids don't talk about her, and I don't ask. As best as I can tell, she's still together with her boss. His car is still in the driveway every time I come to pick the kids up on my pickup day. My guess is they will stay together. She's essentially incapable of living a normal adult life without help. I don't know much about him, but he's never been married. He's a good 5 to 7 years older than she is, and he's not much of a looker, so I'm guessing he will stick with what he can get. I would not be shocked to find out that they're getting married in the near future, but wouldn't be shocked if they don't. I would say that I hope they are happy, but I really don't care. I did a fair bit of individual counseling after all this happened, back when things fell apart, and I took time off from work. I was in intensive outpatient therapy and had an individual therapist through that program. It was absolutely amazing. She was the one who essentially made me understand that separation was a possibility that I could consider, and that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. After leaving the program, I had a new individual therapist who was nice, but she was more of a cheerleader. She would listen politely and agree with everything I said and say supportive things, but she never really seemed to challenge me, never really tried to get into the roots of some of these problems. I felt like I left her and got another therapist who was older and a bit more experienced. He was a little better at challenging me and working on difficult issues, but he and I never seemed to really have a connection. So I cut that off after about a year. I am still looking for another one because I'm a big fan of therapy. I am almost certain the sexual harassment crap was simply a smokescreen in case somehow something got back to me. Someone at her job calls me and tells me something's going on between them. She's already established that something is happening, and this coworker is simply misinterpreting his harassment as a relationship. The dead bedroom was definitely a symptom of the affair, not the cause. I remember the last time I had tried to initiate X. This was about a month or two after things has fizzled to nothing, and we were generally sleeping in separate bedrooms. Not every night, but most nights. It has been 6 to 8 weeks since we had last had X, so I sort of half-heartedly initiated and said something like, quote unquote, it's been almost 2 months since we had X. She froze up like a deer in a headlight, like she had no idea what to say, like something like, quote unquote, yeah, I feel bad about that, and then walked into the other bedroom. That's a pretty solid sign, I would say, although at the time, I was still blind to it. In hindsight, she was clearly banging the dude at this point, which was still a good 6 months before I brought up separation. I didn't let their HR department know for 2 reasons. First, I didn't want to do anything that would put her in even a worse financial position. She loses her job, and suddenly I'm paying another $1,000 a month in alimony. My primary goal was to improve my financial position coming out of this mess, not to hurt hers. Second, there is no traditional HR department. Without giving too many details, she works for a part of a municipal, and he's the boss of that small part. Why I'm sure there are powers that be that have supervisory authority over him and would look negatively about him dating a direct subordinate. It isn't a cut and dry thing. I'm not even sure who I would call if I wanted to. The mayor? But wait, once the divorce is final, would it affect the alimony? No, it wouldn't affect the alimony, as that can't be changed. She could seek a modification of child support, but that would be an uphill battle. Even if it's not going to cost me money directly out of my pocket, it doesn't get me anything except satisfy my sense of personal revenge. Let's say she gets fired and it doesn't cost me a dime. Now she can't afford the mortgage and needs to sell the house and move the kids out of the district, or I have to bite the bullet and move back into the district. It sets off a chain of events that ultimately gives me more headache. Rather than trying to screw with my ex-wife, I much rather rebuild my career, live my life, have fun with my kids, who repeatedly tells me they prefer living with me, and enjoy having extremely frequent sex with my younger, hotter girlfriend. Thank you for staying to the end of this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know what you think about this story. Have a wonderful day.